Welcome to Natu Reads, an audio library of revolutionary texts. Neo-Colonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism, by Kwame Nkrumah, Part 7. Six. Primary resources and foreign interests. American and European companies connected with the world's most powerful banking and financial institutions are, with the consent of African governments, entering upon major projects designed to exploit new sources of primary products. In some cases, these are allied to long-term ventures for the establishment of certain essential industries. In the main, however, they are confining themselves to the production of materials in their basic or secondary stages, with the object of transforming them in the mills and plants owned and run by the exploiting companies in the metropolitan lands. Africa has failed to make much headway on the road to purposeful industrial development because her natural resources have not been employed for that end, but have been used for the greater development of the Western world. This has been a continuing process that has gained tremendous momentum in recent years, following the intention and introduction of new processes and techniques that have quickened the output of both the ferrous and non-ferrous metal industries of Europe and America in order to keep pace with the ever-increasing demand for finished goods. Military preparations and nuclear expansion have had a considerable impact upon this demand. World output of crude steel almost doubled itself in the decade between 1950 and 1960, from 190 million tons to 340 million tons. Even the regression of 1958, which lasted through the following years, failed to halt the progress, which went on in lesser degree in both Eastern and Western countries. The general forecast is that this tempo of production will be maintained. As it comes from Western sources, it makes little allowance for expansion of African use of primary products, and envisages a continuance of the present flow as between developing source countries and highly industrialized users. Nor does it take into account the likelihood of a repressive tendency in Western economies that can certainly affect the demand for raw materials. A publication of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe in 1959 estimated that the world production of steel between 1972 and 1975 will be in the region of 630 million tons. Before the last war, most of the Western world's iron and steel output was based upon local raw materials. The post-war years, particularly since 1956, have seen an opposite trend. Something like a quarter of the raw materials, 90 million tons out of 400 million, used in the world's metallurgical industries have been imported. The countries mainly importing these raw materials are the United States, Western Europe, and Japan. The Soviet Union and the developing countries have at their disposal sufficient quantities of domestic raw materials. At the present time, 3 large areas of primary resources are being exploited for the benefit of the greater producer countries. These are Africa, Canada, and South America, in particular Chile and Peru, and lately Venezuela. Canada has become a province of American capital investment, which draws off high profits and exploits vast resources of raw products for conversion in American plants. South America and Africa, besides offering these advantages, provide cheap labor and local governmental assistance by way of duty exemption for imported machinery and equipment, as well as tax remission. Surveys now being carried out in Africa are discovering more and more deposits of valuable raw materials. Western investigators regard them essentially as sources of exploitation for the commerce and industry of their world, ignoring completely the development of the countries in which they lie. Robert Sawnal, in an article in Europe, France Outre-mer of November 1961, surveys the possibilities of Africa as a provider of ferrous raw materials for the industries of the great metallurgical countries. He reminds his readers that there are sources of these primary materials in Europe, such as Sweden and Spain, and that for Japan, there are the countries of Asia and Oceania. He concludes that European participation is a favorable factor in starting off the exploitation of Africa's mineral resources, but that the new productive capacities in course of development should counsel prudence and a detailed examination of the selling possibilities. These mines are bound to start off in a situation of lively competition, which must have its effect upon price levels. They need, therefore, to be subjected to close preliminary examination before being embarked upon, and must depend upon agreement between the exploiting companies and the host states, which will give the former a just return and the latter a state fiscal regime for the functioning of the, quote, harmonized exploitation, end quote. In short, the governments of the new states are seen in the role of policemen for the banking and industrial consortia bent upon continuing the old imperialist pattern in Western African relationships. The, quote, stable fiscal regime, end quote, they will guarantee out of such exploitation will, according to Robert Sawnell, be based on conditions of depressed prices arising from acute competition. There has been a considerable increase in the production of primary materials in Africa since 1945, under the stimulus of post-war rebuilding needs throughout the world, and the exigencies of Cold War stockpiling and armaments requirements. Another driving factor has been the revolution in productive methods and management. The surge of colonial peoples towards independence must also be acknowledged as a force contributing to the extension of raw materials production. In some cases, the production of primary materials since 1945 has multiplied several times, and in most cases has doubled. The scene in Guinea shows much change, following the discovery of deposits of iron and bauxite. Diamond mining has also made noticeable progress. The Ivory Coast in 1960 was producing diamonds at an annual level of about 200,000 carats, and operations have started in the manganese fields in the neighborhood of Grand Lahou. Calcium phosphate is being exploited in Senegal, and aluminum and oxidized sand provide some mining activity. The mining of iron ore is underway in Mauritania, where an Anglo-French consortium is planning to produce 4 million tons as a first stage, to be increased later to 6 million tons annually. Deposits are estimated at around 115 million tons of 63% iron grade. Finds of very rich phosphate deposits in Senegal have brought a French-Belgian financial and mining combination into the country to carry out their exploitation. An estimated 40 million tons of raw phosphates are expected to allow a production of 13 million tons of rich phosphates through the extraction of 600,000 tons of concentrates annually for 20 years. Phosphates have also been found in Togo, which are to be exploited by a consortium associated with the Banque de Paris des Pays-Bas and established mining companies having connections with the Société Générale de Belgique. Manganese, uranium, oil, and iron fields in Gabon have brought in similar consortia for their exploitation. Cameroon produces little from mining beyond some small amounts of gold, tin, and rutile. Though there has been no effective change in Madagascar's position, there have been discoveries of uranium, monazite, zircon, chromium, and other materials, whose exploitation is being investigated. Iron ore finds in Algeria are estimated at 100 million tons, and we have been hearing a good deal lately about the oil and gas resources of the Sahara Desert. Algeria's fields are now producing at the rate of 450,000 barrels a day, about a third of those of Iran, and Libya has reached 150,000 barrels daily, with the anticipation of achieving 600,000 barrels a day within the next 5 years. In Algeria's sector of the Sahara, finds of minerals at Tindouf are expected to produce 90% iron. The highest rate of increase is in South Africa, where a production of 620,108 kilograms of gold makes the Republic the producer of half the world's supplies. An output of 2,838,000 carats of diamonds in 1959, about 40% of which were gemstones, puts it third after the Congo and Ghana, whose output is almost entirely of industrial diamonds, though the value received, because of its control of the industry and the number of gem diamonds, is relatively greater than that of Ghana's. She also leads in the production of chromium ore and is second in the output of lead from Southwest Africa. Even South Africa's uranium production of 7,000 tons, obtained largely from gold and copper slimes, is way ahead of the Congo's 1,761 tons. Mining of all kinds in South Africa has reached a stage of exploitation which can be compared with that of Canada, and which is now feverishly beginning to open up in Australia, where the same companies, in alliance with American and other associated interests, are paramount. The close relationship is borne out even in the names of the mines, particularly in Canada, which frequently duplicate those already to be found in South Africa and the Rhodesias. Africa's possession of industrial raw materials could, if used for her own development, place her among the most modernized continents of the world without recourse to outside sources. Iron ore, mostly of high quality, is to be found in gigantic quantities near to the coast, where it can easily be shipped abroad. As for bauxite, Africa's estimated reserves are more than 2/5 those of the whole world. They're twice those of Australia, which are placed second. Guinea alone is estimated to contain deposits equal to those of the whole of Australia, that is, over 1,000 million tons. Ghana is said to have reserves totaling 400 million tons. Sudan, Cameroon, Congo, and Malawi are other known sources of considerable deposits, and the investigation of probable reserves is proceeding in Mozambique, Sierra Leone, Portuguese Guinea, and other parts of Africa. Among the base materials essential for the production of iron and steel, manganese has a place of high importance. Besides being used for alloying with pig iron in the manufacture of special steels, it is used in the chemical industry. For certain purposes, under present-day processes, manganese is irreplaceable. It is in constant use at the rate of 18 to 20 kilograms to a ton of steel. The Soviet Union and China are practically self-sufficient in the supply of the essential basic material. The other great world steel producers, the United States, Western Europe, and Japan, do not have appreciable quantities in their own territories. Their principal sources of supply are Africa, India, and Brazil. Of these, Africa provides the greatest quantity. Angola, Bechuanaland, Congo, Ghana, Morocco, Rhodesia, Southwest Africa, and Egypt have been among the producing countries for some time. Others, like the Ivory Coast and Gabon, are now being added to the list. North Africa is the world's greatest producer of phosphates. Morocco alone exports 7 million tons out of some 9 million tons coming from North Africa. The USA comes next, with an export of 4 million tons. New producing countries which have appeared since 1957 are China, with some 600,000 tons in 1960, and North Vietnam, with 500,000 tons. Senegal is a producer of aluminum phosphate, her output being about 90,000 tons a year, and Togo is now appearing on the phosphate market. Iron ore, like oil, has become one of the more recent mineral discoveries in Africa, North and West Africa being the main centers. Among high-grade ore producers in 1960 were Liberia, 68% iron ore, Angola, 65%, South Africa, 62%, Sierra Leone, 60%, Morocco, 60%, and Rhodesia, 55%, the minimum iron content for high-grade ore. There have been discoveries of higher quantities and quality since 1960. It is considered that most countries in West Africa, from Mauritania to Congo-Brazzaville, have iron ore deposits. Enlargement of the production in Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone is being planned. Deposits are either being placed under production or are planned for exploitation in Nigeria, Niger, Mauritania, Ghana, Gabon, Cameroon, Senegal, and Congo-Brazzaville. Ghana's reserves, estimated at about 1 million tons, are in the Shiena area of the northern region and not easily accessible, and have an average iron content of 46 to 51%. It is proposed to exploit the deposits for domestic use when the Volta Lake is opened up for inland transport. The Niger Republic deposits are estimated at more than 100 million tons of 45 to 60% quality. They are at Sai, about 35 miles from Niamey, at the moment distant from roads, railroads, and ports. These disadvantages affect also the exploitation of the known deposits in the Kandy region of Dahomey, of 68% quality. Algeria has been an iron ore producer for some time. Exploitation was undertaken there in 1913 by a French enterprise known as La Société de Louenza, operating at Djemba-Louenza in the south of Constantine, close to the Tunisian border, formerly incorporated as a department of France. The company has built its own railway lines connecting its two producing centers, Touet-Kéberit, to join with the Bon-Tebessa line. Its plants enable Société de Louenza to export iron principally to Great Britain, Germany, Italy, Belgium and the Low Countries, and the USA. Between the outset of this exploitation and the end of 1960, a total of 46 million tons of mineral has been extracted. Louenza's personnel then included 600 Europeans and 1,500 Algerians. The existence of iron ore in the Sahara was first indicated in the Gara Gibelet region, some 110 miles southeast of Tindouf, in 1952. Difficulties of situation and water supply are obstacles in the way of exploitation. Nevertheless, a committee composed of representatives of the iron and steel industries of France, Belgium, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands is busy investigating the possibilities, in conjunction with the French Bureau d'Investissement en Afrique. Liberia's iron ore resources are reputed to stand at 1,000 million tons in the Nimba Range and 600 million tons in the deposits near the Sierra Leone border. The Nimba iron ore mine, which has been sunk and is being mined by a consortium known as LAMCO Joint Venture Enterprise, members of the consortium being Liberian-American-Swedish Minerals Company and the Bethlehem Steel Corporation, is estimated to have reserves of over 300 million tons of high-grade hematite ore with an average iron content of over 65%. Long-term contracts are in hand from German, French, Italian, and Belgian steelworks, while a considerable part of the output will go to the powerful United States Bethlehem Steel, which has a 25% participation in the venture, the other 75% being taken up by LAMCO. LAMCO is said to be a company shared between the Liberian government and foreign enterprise on a 50-50 basis. The non-government participant is Liberian Iron Ore Company, a consortium of American and Swedish financial and steel interests. Chief of these is the Swedish mining company Grängesberg, which besides having an important stake in the LAMCO Nimba mine, acts as managing agent for this joint venture, in which American capital predominates. Grängesberg, formerly holding 12/28 of the LAMCO syndicate, according to its annual report, adopted at its annual general meeting held in Stockholm on 18 May 1962, increased its participation to 15/28, giving it a majority slice of the equity. Grängesberg owns iron mines in central Sweden, as well as power stations, forest and farm properties. It also built and controls the Frövi Ludvigs Järnväg rail undertaking and operates the Oxelösund Iron Works, turning out pig iron and heavy plates. In addition, it possesses and runs a fleet of ships which, at the end of 1961, comprised 33 vessels, and had on order another 4 for delivery in 1962 and 1963. A subsidiary, Aktiebolaget Hamatit, works mines in North Africa, and others include an arms and chemical enterprise, Aktiebolaget Express Dynamite. The Swedish government took over holdings which Grängesberg exercised in Luossavaara Kurunavaara AB LKAB, but out of the purchase price of 925 million krona it received, the company reinvested 100 million krona in LKAB. The value given to these government-purchased holdings was almost twice as much as Grängesberg's fully paid-up capital of 495,800,000 krona, and even without them, its assets at the end of 1961 stood at 403,719,000 krona, in addition to shares in subsidiary and other companies totaling 154,380,000 krona. The company's net profit for the year was 38,787,251 krona, and dividends absorbed very nearly the same amount at 35,700,000 krona. Its iron sales increased from 1,620,000 tons in 1959 to 2,560,000 tons in 1961. Bethlehem Steel is a heavy investment sphere for Rockefeller's profits from Standard Oil, which has been pushing to displace British-Dutch oil interests in the Far East. John D. Rockefeller III has made himself a specialist on the Far East, with a preference for Japan, where he was a member of John Foster Dulles' peace treaty mission in 1951. He established the Japan Society Incorporated for cultural interchange. Persistent visits and pressure have boosted Standard Oil Company facilities in Japan, Indonesia, New Guinea, and India in oil production, refining, and sales. The Rockefeller interest in Japan is reflected in the link with the Sumitomo Metallurgical Group, which has been cemented in the Bethlehem Copper Corporation Limited, a 1955 British Columbia, Canada registration. Property claims in the Highland Valley of British Columbia hold ore reserves of 3,304,000 tons grade 1 to 20% copper and 12,723,000 tons of 0.82% grade. Additional claims are held in the provinces as well as a full subsidiary, Highland Valley Smelting and Refining Company. Total output is to go to Sumitomo Metal Mining Corporation Limited Group, which is responsible for bringing the property into production. It has bought 400,000 shares in Bethlehem and has options on further lots in connection with loan promises of $5 million and an agreement to contribute 1/2 of the funds required for expansion. Sumitomo provides Bethlehem's vice president and 2 other directors, one of whom is from the prominent Tanaka family. The first deliveries from the Nimba mine were made during May 1963, and production of 7,500,000 tons is planned for 1965. The Nimba iron ore streaks of Liberia stretch into Guinea, where prospecting is taking place in the Nimba-Simandu region, about 1,000 kilometers from Conakry, close to the Liberia-Ivory Coast borders. A West European banking group, representing itself as the Consortium Européen pour le Développement des Ressources Naturelles de l'Afrique, CONSAFRIC, is undertaking investigations by contract with the Guinea government. The group comprises Banque de l'Indochine, Paris, Deutsche Bank AG, Frankfurt, Main, Hambros Bank, London, Nederlands Handel Maatschappij, NV, Amsterdam, Société de Bruxelles pour la Finance et l'Industrie, Profina, Brussels, SA Auxiliaire de Finance et de Commerce, Oxifi, Brussels, Compagnie Franco-Américaine des Métaux et des Minerais, Conframe, Paris. The Banque de l'Indochine is closely associated with the Banque de Paris et des Pays-Bas, and has links with the Société Générale de Belgique. Its original sphere of operations has been largely closed by its exclusion from North Vietnam because of the socialist regime established there, while in South Vietnam, it has now become subordinate to American finance. The Banque de l'Indochine, which already had a foothold in Algeria, is turning more and more to Africa, where it is grouped with several consortia, usually around the interests connected with the Société Générale de Belgique, the Banque de Paris et des Pays-Bas, and the Deutsche Bank, all leagued with Morgan International interests. The Banque de l'Indochine is represented on the board of Le Nickel, which exploits a variety of minerals in Asia and Oceania, and has a substantial interest in the Compagnie Française des Minerais de l'Uranium. The late H. Robiliard was another director on Le Nickel's board, as well as J. Pureret from Penaroya and Les Mines de Roiron, whose former president was the late H. Lafont of the Banque de Paris des Pays-Bas. These, and other French and American interests, grouped around the Société des Minéraux et des Métaux, Patinot, and American Metal Climax, formed the combination known as Compromet, several of whom received Marshall Plan credits in the post-war years. The Deutsche Bank, which has always concerned itself with exploitation and investment in the less developed areas, also has close associations with the Banque de Paris. Even during the war, the Deutsche Bank did not relinquish its role of colonialist exploiter, but followed the German army into the conquered territories of Europe. Today, it is busy pushing the West German interests in Africa, Panama, Chile, Pakistan, Colombia, and Puerto Rico. It has floated loans for Argentina, the city of Oslo, and Norway. It has a holding in the Pakistan Industrial Credit and Investment Corporation Limited. It has acted as fiduciary house for such considerable international corporations as General Motors, Philips, Royal Dutch Petroleum, and Sina Viscosa. The connection with Royal Dutch Petroleum continues Deutsche Bank's association with the pre-First World War Mosul oil concession in the part of Turkey that became Iraq, while its activities on behalf of General Motors and Philips emphasize the subservient role the Deutsche Bank plays to the Morgan interests, which conduct the international expansion of these vast, ramified organizations. On the board of this bank sit directors of the Mannesmann steel interests of the Ruhr, also represented on another German bank, the Dresdner, which is also engaged in a number of investment ventures in Africa. The Mannesmann Steel Company, one of the most important in the German Ruhr, was established in 1885. Its chairman, Dr. Wilhelm Zanger, is a director of Algoma Steel Corporation Limited of Canada, in which the German interests were linked for some time with the Hawker Siddeley Group of Great Britain. Mannesmann is associated in several projects in India and elsewhere with the Krupps and its Duisburg affiliate, Demag. AG Demag works in close collaboration with the American firm of Blaw, Knox & Co. This firm, which makes equipment for steel mills and for chemical, petroleum, and other industries, falls within the Malone sphere of interests. Hence, it has links with Bethlehem Steel, which associates with the West German steel industry, into which the Malone interests have increasingly pushed. Both the Deutsche Bank and Dresdner Bank, with which Mannesmann is so closely tied, in alliance with the Morgan Guarantee Trust, have considerable interest in the Oppenheimer companies of southern Africa. Hambros Bank, the late Sir Charles Hambro was the link with the Bank of England, Cable and Wireless Holding, and Oppenheimer holding companies have valuable interests in the diamond, gold, and other mining undertakings in Central and Southern Africa. A merchant bank, Hambros has long been associated with the Scandinavian investment market, and has in the past years spread its activities in Europe in anticipation of Britain's entry into the common market. It added a subsidiary in Zurich in 1962, Hambros Investment Company. Like many other financial institutions, it has entered a growing field for finance investment, that of leasing equipment to industry. For this purpose, Hambros established equipment leasing company, Elco, in 1962. It also engages directly in the business of importation and distribution of motor cars and commercial vehicles from the British Motor Corporation into the United States, through British Motor Corporation Hambros Incorporated, a joint 50-50 venture. The British Motor Corporation covers Austin, MG, Morris, Riley, Wolseley Motors, and subsidiary companies of the Newfield and other groups. Through its acquisition of the banking firm of Laidlaw & Co., New York, Hambros is strengthening its associations with important American banking interests. Among Hambros Bank's many other interests is its connection with the bullion firm of Mocatta & Goldsmith, which increased its holdings of bullion in 1961 from £3,750,000 to £6,500,000.